Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Denarius Metals. Denarius is an explorer and developer of polymetallic mining projects in high-grade districts in Spain and Colombia. Its primary focus is its flagship Lomero Peyotes project in the Iberian Pyrite Belt of Spain. It also has an interest in the Teruel zinc, lead, and silver project located in the Leon province of Spain, as well as 100% interest in the Zancudo project in Colombia, which does provide an opportunity to develop near-term production and cash flow through local contract miners and long-term growth through exploration. And with me on today's webinar, I have Mike Davies, who's the CFO of Denarius Metals. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks, Taylor. I appreciate the opportunity presented to us by Red Cloud to tell our story this afternoon, and to the viewers, I'd like to say thanks for taking your time to join us and listen in.
Perfect. Today's format of the webinar will be comprised of two parts. And the first part, Mike will provide an introduction and update on Denarius. And then in the second part, we'll take your questions live. So please send your questions using the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can. I'll note that you can type them in at any point throughout the presentation. So before we get going, I'll handle the disclosures. So for Denarius Metals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Denarius corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Denarius Metals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Mike to discuss Denarius and what investors have to look forward to with the story.
Great, thanks, Taylor. So Taylor did me a favor and got the forward-looking statement out of the way. So let's move straight into the presentation. Lots to unpack over about the next half hour through the slides. Denarius was formed in 2021, taking into account the mine finding and mine building capabilities of our team to start up a company focused on exploring and developing high-grade projects. We've got 3 projects, as Taylor mentioned, Lomero and Teruel in Spain, and the Zancudo project in Colombia. And what's key about these projects is that we focused our selection for our portfolio on in-demand critical minerals, copper, zinc, lead, gold, and silver, based on not only expected growth and demand for these commodities as they go forward, but positive sentiment and outlook on pricing for the markets for these materials. We also wanted to focus in on jurisdictions that we figured were the right jurisdictions, ones which had a rich history of exploration and production to give us comfort in moving into those jurisdictions, that we'd be able to operate successfully there, and nearby producers currently working there, which also gives us good sentiment that the infrastructure and other resources we need in the jurisdiction are present. And critical to us was looking at projects that have significant exploration upside to fuel the growth that we want to be able to have in this company as we go forward. We have a seasoned team with a proven track record of success, and our team has always felt that incorporating long-term ESG strategies and the development of your project to gain the social license to operate is fundamental. Earlier this year, we completed a rights offering and a private placement, strengthening our balance sheet to carry each of these projects through the next stage this year. So we feel that we're in an adequately capitalized, great position moving the projects forward. I mentioned our management team. We're led by Serafino Iacono. He's our executive chairman and CEO, a mine finder and mine builder, together with Alessandro Cecchi, our VP exploration. Significant success in the past with new mining operations in Venezuela and more recent in Colombia, particularly through GCM Mining, where I was also working along with a few others on the team with respect to the Segovia operations and the Marmato operations that are now part of Aris Mining. Recently in June, we re-elected our board of directors, but we took the step to conserve some cost in our overhead by shrinking our board from 8 members down to 5 members. We currently have 60 million common shares outstanding, and with options and warrants, a fully diluted count of about 116 million. That includes about 42 million warrants that were issued earlier this year in those financings that, if exercised, would bring in about another $25 million to our treasury. Market cap currently around 35 million, and 23% of the shares are now held by management and the board, Serafino being the biggest shareholder with about 17%, and Aris Mining, who did participate in the rights offering, currently holding about 17%. All the other institutional holders below 10%, plus the retail shareholders round out the other 60% of our shareholding. When we looked at a research report published by Red Cloud back in April, we sort of saw the peers that they've stacked us up against. We certainly looked towards Pan Global and Emerita as two of the comparables that we're keeping an eye on our valuation relative. And you can see we're about 50% of the valuation of those companies, but do believe with the strength of the portfolio that we have, we really do deserve to have a much better valuation. And we think this will play out over time as we progress our projects through the next 6 to 12 months of work. Certainly Red Cloud highlighted the work we've been doing in Spain to add permits and capitalize the company as key enablers to open up valuation potential with these deposits that are in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. I also mentioned in the outset that sustainability is a key attribute that our company incorporates when we're developing projects. At GCM Mining, we had a tremendous track record in our Segovia operations over the 12 years that we ran the project, incorporating the local communities and strategies around health and safety and environment in our operations. This is fundamental to how we see creating that social license to operate. And we've already started our efforts when we look at Spain, where we operate through our subsidiary Alto Minerals, with the theme of creating operations looking at mining for the future. We're still early stage in developing the longer term initiatives, but we certainly have jumped in starting to implement local programs and activities. We're also networking with some of the peers in the area so that we can fast track what we're doing, leveraging already insights from their programs and ensuring that we meet the needs of the community and the operations as we move forward. In Colombia, as I mentioned, with GCM Mining, we had significant experience, and Zancudo Metals is our local subsidiary there. And more recently, we've just gotten engaged now working with the local mayor in a number of programs. Mind you, most are still in the early stage and more of the donation type. But we've been successful in starting to get our brand into the community and helping them understand not only what we intend to do down the road with the Zancudo operation, but integrating the needs of the community into our ESG programs. So let's look at Spain and get a little more detail into the projects there. We see Spain as one of the right jurisdictions to be in. A long history of mining, certainly in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, and with a focus these days on critical minerals as accentuated by the EU, particularly with the recent Critical Raw Materials Act, where they're trying to ensure that they have sources locally for battery metals, renewable energy, etc. We see the initiatives in Spain and the EU as very supportive as a mining-friendly jurisdiction for us to operate. So we're very comfortable being in Spain and certainly in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. It is known as one of the largest concentration of massive sulfides in the world. Mining goes back more than 1,000 years. There's been over 200 million tons of ore taken out of the Iberian Pyrite Belt over history. It's also an area that is characterized by all the infrastructure that you'd need to be able to build a mining project. It's serviced by water, power, and highways. It's got access to the port of Huelva, which is only about 100 kilometers away by road from our Lomero project, and the nearby towns and villages, including Seville, where we have an office, is about 136 kilometers away by road from the Lomero project. So we're situated in a really nice jurisdiction that we feel we can establish our mining operations in as we move forward. In the tan part of the map in the middle, you can see the Iberian Pyrite Belt highlighted. It runs about 250 kilometers long from Spain into eastern Portugal. It's about 50 kilometers wide. It's home to over 80 known mineral deposits, and we're sitting right in the middle on the northern edge of the Pyrite Belt. about 110 kilometers from the Lundin mining operation in Portugal, and just over 100 kilometers to the First Quantum project at the other end of the belt in Spain. We currently also are about 10 kilometers from the Aguatinitas project and several kilometers away from the dormant San Telmo mine. So we're sitting in the right neighborhood, in the right jurisdiction, and some very successful current mining operations staged all around us. I mentioned up front that one of the things that we also look for is projects that have a rich history, and we certainly see that with Lomero. The mining license at Lomero was initially granted in 1812, and by the 1850s, mining had commenced, and it really focused initially on the two pits, the Lomero open pit and the Poyatos open pit. By 1905, mining had moved underground into an 8-level mine, which you can see an illustration of on the page there. And what they discovered at depth is the mineralization formed into one larger deposit at depth. By about 1990, mining at the Lomero Poyatos deposit had stopped as metals prices declined, costs were rising, and the previous owners falling into an insolvency process. We were successful in buying the Lomero permit out of that insolvency process, and that's how we gained access to the title at Lomero Poyatos. One of the other things that we benefited from in the acquisition was a very strong database of information from the exploration work that had taken place over the last several decades. The most important part for us coming in the early 2000s, as Cambridge Mineral Resources carried out a drilling program that ultimately resulted in a mineral resource estimate prepared by Bear Dolbear around 2012. Over 20 million tons of material with a copper equivalent grade of almost 5%. So an important database of information for us to build upon as we move forward. On this Google Earth image of the section of the Iperian Pyrite Belt where we're located, you can see in the center the outline of the Lomero Poyatos investigation permit, the purple squiggly lines in the middle denoting the location of the former mining operation. That's about a 500 hectare area. And as I mentioned earlier, just to 10 kilometers to the east, you can see the Aguatinitas mine of Sandfire. That mine's been in operation since 2009, produces about 2 million tons a year of ore, and is currently down around 800 meters at depth. Just adjacent to the Lomero Poyatos permit, you can also see an area, it's about 150 hectares called Palmarejo. That was a dormant exploration permit in Alto Minerals that we discovered after the acquisition. It had lapsed due to inactivity. We were successful with the local mining agency, the Junta, to reestablish that permit. We now have 3 years added. In addition to the 3 years, we also were successful in getting extended at the Lomero Poyatos. So we've got 650 hectares there now of territory that is right on path with the mineralized trend. And to the east, you can see the San Telmo mine about 3 kilometers away, another source of significant pyrite production in the past that gives us confidence in terms of the pyrite content going forward. So back in 2021, we started our first drill program. You can see in the red outlined area there the location of the holes. We did 83 holes, 26,000 meters of drilling in our phase 1 that finished in July of 2022. The phase 1 program was really a validation and infill drilling program. I mentioned earlier that 20 million ton resource from the 2012 period. And we wanted to go in and validate. We ran a number of twin holes in addition to infill drilled holes. And by July 2022, worked with SRK to publish our first inferred mineral resource estimate. We're able to qualify about 10.7 million tons of material with the grades that are shown there, about 1.6% copper equivalent. Not quite as much as what was in the historic report. We did find that the mining widths were a little narrower than in the new interpretation compared to the historic report. But the grades are a bit lower because there was a data set of material that we were not able to include in this first round resource it required some additional validation drilling before SRK would be comfortable enough to put them in. And this was a higher grade underground drill set of about 63 holes. We've been, since that time, October last year through February this year, worked on our phase 2. Phase 2 is really focusing on these higher grade data sets that were not included in phase 1. And you can see we did 42 holes, 13,000 meters. And with the key intercepts that we reported in our press release back in May, a couple of things came out. If you look at the top of the chart, the central part of the deposit, you can see the copper grades between 1.2 and 1.9%. That's 3 to 4 times higher than the copper grades in the initial mineral resource that we reported back in July of last year. And if you look at the eastern part of the deposit and the western part in the lower half, you can see that the zinc and the lead grades are also significantly higher than what we reported in the first pass in mineral resource estimate. The silver and gold grades continue to be pretty strong, so we're very comfortable in our expectation that we should see an improvement of grades when we get to the next mineral resource estimate that we plan to publish in the third quarter of this year. And to further highlight the findings after the first 2 phases of our drill results, you can see in this overlay on the deposit area that the center part of the deposit tends to be more of the copper enrichment zone of the deposit, where the eastern and western flanks tend to be more zinc and lead enriched areas of the deposit. So it's a tremendous deposit. We're currently working through a 4,000 meter validation and a drill program, our phase 3, also within the boundary of the known mineralization. It's really targeting the surface high-grade holes that we didn't cover through phases 1 and 2. And once we complete that drilling and get the assays here in the third quarter, we will then be preparing an updated mineral resource estimate with SRK. The importance of that mineral resource estimate is it will then become the basis for our preliminary economic assessment that we expect to move forward and complete by the end of this year. Later this year, we'll also start up an extension drilling program of about 6,000 meters, focusing on areas identified through geophysical and other studies that we completed last year. 2 particular areas are the Las Marinas target area to the west of the deposit and the Alianza target area to the east. This will allow us to add more resources to the next mineral resource estimate update that we plan to do in 2024. And if you're looking north at a cross section, again, you can see on the eastern and western flanks the target areas. But the other thing that we're looking for is to drill some deep targets as part of this next round of 6,000 meter extension drilling. The deposit currently has about a 1.3 kilometer strike length and currently goes down about 400 meters. As I mentioned earlier, the nearby Aguatinitas property goes down about 800 meters. So we believe that there is a potential for extension of the deposit, and we'll be putting some drill holes in that 6,000 meter program to begin to start to test the hypothesis and confirm whether the mineralization does go down deeper. So that's where we are with Limero. It's been a very interesting journey to date, focusing on drilling the project to try to confirm the historic understanding of the geological model. We're preparing an updated mineral resource estimate in the third quarter this year. We're currently also working with SRK on some high-level economic option analysis, looking at potential for mine design, potential for processing options, really looking at that optionality to figure out the best way to steer the development of this project as we move forward. The 4,000 meter drilling program will be completed in the near part of the third quarter, and then later this year we'll get into that 6,000 meter program. And all of this will culminate in a preliminary economic assessment that we expect to have ready by the end of this year and chart the course for the work in 2024 as we then start to move towards pre-feasibility study. So let's move on to our other project in Spain, the Teruel project. This is something new that we got into after negotiations with Europa Minerals, a name-listed company last November, setting ourselves up with an option to acquire up to 80% of the Teruel project that's located in northern Spain, and doing so in 2 stages. The first stage acquiring 51% by spending $4 million over 3 years on exploration, completing a mining license application, which we will do by the end of July this year, and then completing a PEA on the project. The second option will kick in after that by having us spend $2 million to Europa and completing a pre-feasibility study within the 12 months following the exercise of the first option. We see this as a tremendous opportunity to develop another high-quality base metal project, which is focused, as Taylor said, on zinc, lead, and silver in another historic, well-mineralized mining area and a jurisdiction that's also predisposed to mining. Toral's got an extensive history of drilling as well, with over 60,000 meters, the significant bulk of that done in the 70s and 80s, and more recently since 2017 when Europa Metals got involved, with over 12,000 holes drilled so far. They have generated some very good results, and last year, at the end of November, published an updated mineral resource estimate with a 19% increase in their indicated resources now to 7 million tons, with 5% zinc, 3.7% lead, and a 14% increase in the overall grade. Here we have exposure to 20 million tons of high-grade zinc, lead, and silver material, and we're now started on a program this year as our first year in that option agreement. We're doing up to 11 holes, up to 7,000 meters this year. That will allow us to confirm results from a series of infill drill holes, as well as give us some corroboration of the indicated mineral resource estimate as we move on towards the preparation of that PEA, which we hope to get started on next year. In May, Toral had results from their first hole reported, again getting the expected results with some high lead, silver grades and some very good zinc grades as well. So we're very keen on this project. We think this is going to be a great addition to our exposure to base metals in Spain. So key steps for us this year: we will more than meet our commitment to spend $1 million this year based on the drill program we're doing. We're on track to complete the mining license application that's necessary by the end of July. And as I outlined, the drilling program will be completed between the second and third quarters of this year. And then we'll be able to prep ourselves for next round to come in 2024. So switching continents now and going to Colombia, again, a jurisdiction that our team knows very well from the 12 years that we operated the Gran Colombia gold mining operations in Segovia and Marmato. This is another tremendous mining jurisdiction in Colombia. It's in the district of Antioquia, in particular in the Cauca Belt. You'll recognize a number of the names of some pretty prominent other mines and companies between Continental Gold and the Buritica project to the north, Gold Mining, who has areas surrounding us, Anglo Gold Ashanti and their La Colosa project to the south, and the Marmato project, which is about 120 kilometers away from us. And to the east, the Segovia project, which is about 240 kilometers away from our project. The Zancudo area has a significant amount of previous production history. The Zancudo project includes the former producing Independencia mine. Again, we like the district because it has access to labor, power, water, and is certainly a mining-friendly jurisdiction. Another project with rich history, and this one dates back over 250 years, and has a very storied history of production. From 2010, when Gran Colombia, when we first bought this mine, we really believed in its potential. Unfortunately, in Gran Colombia, it was always number 3 on the depth chart, falling behind Segovia and Marmato. And by 2013, when gold had collapsed, we mothballed the project, and ultimately in 2017, optioned it to IM Gold, who were working along a path of a option earning agreement by spending $10 million over a 6-year period to have 70% of the project. When it was vended by Gran Colombia into Denarius as part of the RTO in 2021, we expected that we would have a 30% interest in the project. But in 2022, as fate would have it, IM Gold, as a result of other internal issues, was unable to continue the funding for their exploration team to meet the full requirements of the earn-in, and they had to walk away. We suddenly found ourselves with full control of the project back in our hands by the fall of last year, and we couldn't have been happier. This is a project that has tremendous history, and we believe that it's probably going to become our next and nearest term producer. The first thing we did last year after taking back control of the project was we went out and got SRK to put together a mineral resource estimate to see what 40,000 meters of drilling completed by IAMGOLD and Gran Colombia over the previous 10 years had come to. We were able to qualify an inferred maiden resource of 2.8 million tons, 6.5 grams gold, 600,000 ounces, 112 grams per ton silver, 10 million ounces, and a 718,000 ounce equivalent mineralization. It extends for about 3.5 kilometers of strike length. Mineralization goes down about 400 meters to vertical extent and is open for expansion in all areas and directions. You can see in the picture on the right the entrance to the former producing Independencia mine. That access goes in about 1 kilometer and is currently open, and we're starting to get some rehab work done by a local contract miner to open things up for us. So this is the project that we will see is coming into production by 2024. We're looking at establishing a 500 ton a day mining operation. We've engaged a local mining contractor that we've worked with before in Gran Colombia. His firm has the financial resources, the people resources, the mining experience, and the know-how to come in and set up contract mining operations, initially focused on the existing mine workings that are left behind in the mine for them to be able to start bringing material out of. Permitting upgrades are already underway, both the mining permit and environmental permit. We should have those completed before the end of the second half of this year. There is an old plant site adjacent to the entrance to the mine that we are currently rehabilitating. We've taken out all the surplus and old equipment that was there, maintained portions of the structure we plan to use, and we're just finalizing the orders for the crushing equipment that we're going to acquire and put on site. We've been working on a mine plan with SRK, and we expect that by the end of the third quarter, we should have a preliminary economic assessment of that 718,000 gold equivalent ounce resource to share with the market. We're currently also evaluating our options for processing the material, and in the final stages of designing the next phase of exploration. We believe that we can, through the next set of exploration results, take this gold equivalent ounce result up to over 1 million ounces of gold with some further drilling to infill drill and qualify known areas that were too widely spaced to be included in the first resource. Just a couple of pictures. We are working on an access road to bypass the towns. You can see a bit of the progress, or just an illustration of what we're doing on the left, and on the right, the old plant site, the roof, the crushing conveyor, etc. We're rehabilitating and keeping that, but we're clearing everything else out to be able to bring in the new crushing equipment. And in the panorama, you can see here on the top middle, the town of Titraby. It's a beautiful town in Colombia. It's about an hour and a half outside Medellin, about 30 kilometers southwest. The Sitio de Viejo, a much smaller village that's closer to where the Independencia mine is. They sit with a road running along the upper ridge of the valley. The Independencia mine location is in the bottom of the valley. So this bypass road, which is about 3.7 kilometers, will connect the mine to the main highway, which is up to the top left of this panorama, and will bypass both towns and all the people that live in between, so that we can have our trucks, which will be running steadily, to bring material from the mine out and take it to where we're going to get it processed. So for us right now, we're preparing the site and the infrastructure for mining. We're working our way through several contracts related to crushing equipment and looking at plant operations. We've already been actively engaging with the local community, socializing the project, incorporating them in our plans, and designing the next phase of exploration. So this, I've referred to it as a bit of a sleeper. I mentioned earlier, we originally at the RTO stage thought we'd have a 30% process and this project would be run by IM Gold. And now we find ourselves with 100% and a plan for production and cash flow by 2024 that not only will allow us to continue to use some of that cash flow for drilling, but to bring some of that cash as a non-dilutive source of equity back to the parent and use that for our exploration programs in Spain. So a very exciting development for us in Colombia for this company. So with that, just a quick wrap up. I think we're in the right projects in the right jurisdictions. Our team certainly has the experience for exploration and development stage projects, and we're already working very hard on the projects that we have identified. And I think any one of these projects would make a company. We've got 3 projects that are going to add up and make a super company. So with that, Taylor, I guess we can open up for the Q&A.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. It was a great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat at any point. So with that said, we do have some that have come in, focusing on Zancudo to start. How expensive is it to operate in Colombia? What could we expect the all-in sustaining costs to be?
We're, as I said, with still delineating some of the answers to that question as we work our way through the processing side of the material, but and ultimately got to work into the final model that'll go into that PEA. But I would expect that we'll see an all-in sustaining cost of $1,200 or hopefully less for this operation. Again, contract mining's efficient. It's got great byproduct credits with over 100 grams per ton of silver. So it's not going to be any different than what we saw out of the work that we did in Segovia.
Great. Okay. So with the resource that you have there, do you have to do any upgrading before mining, or is it essentially just not worth it in terms of the spend to get the density for mining operations there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what it brings up is that, for us, the startup of Zancudo is very reminiscent of how we got going in Segovia. When we took over Segovia in 2010, there was no mineral resource statement. We leveraged contract mining as a way to get started with the old mine workings. There's already faces open, there's areas, and we've hired a contract miner who knows how to do this. They don't need a 43-101 mine plan to go in and know where the veins are and how to mine these open workings. Really, the 43-101 is to help demonstrate the economics for a lot of other sort of corporate and financial needs that we have. So we can get started mining without having a formal 43-101 mine plan in front of us. We are preparing it because we do want to chart the course going forward. We do believe that, as SRK noted in the 43-101 for the Zancudo resource, there are some areas, they were too widely spaced for them to be able to include in the initial resource. Our drilling program is going to go back and tie those in. We are going to focus on upgrading some resources, but also extending the resources with a target of getting it up over to 1 million ounces gold equivalent with the next phase of drilling that we would complete at some point next year. So we can get started with what we know, and we will turn the money that we make from the contract mining. A portion of that will go back into the exploration program, and like we did in Segovia over time, we'll be able to continue to upgrade the quality of the resources with that investment.
Great. Okay. And do you have an exploration target for Zancudo right now, or is that kind of down the road, like away from extending the current deposit, or is there more depth that you'd be targeting, or?
It's a long strike. There's some areas in between the veins that we've got set to target to infill drill, but it's really going to be moving along strike. We definitely have some detailed targets that we will be pursuing. And that's where the design of the program right now is coming in place. It's mostly drilling from surface, but as things open up underground down the road, we'll be able to start to drill from some of the underground access that'll come.
Okay, great. And then again on Zancudo, just how long would it take to get up to 500 tons per day of production?
We don't think it's going to take us long to ramp up to 500 tons a day. There is a goal longer term to get up to 1,000 tons a day. We think that'll take a couple of years possibly. But to get, going, we're probably 250, 300 tons a day. And then I think a relatively short period of time, be able to get up to 500. So we're pretty confident in that from the survey work that the contract miner's been able to do so far.
Great. Okay. So we have a question here wondering about just what level of concern do you have, if any, for Colombia vis-a-vis the recent government actions to nationalize certain resources and industries in other Latin American jurisdictions?
I think we've become very comfortable, certainly watching how they've approached the gold mining industry in Colombia. It's people have been operating, I think, in a fairly steady state. And when you look at Aris Mining, I think they've been able to communicate that they find themselves operating pretty much as they would expect to be. I think it's really a function, as Serafino always says, it's not just the know-how, but the know-who. And I think in our particular case, incorporating the communities into the mining projects is the way to get that social license. And that's certainly been critical for us in our early stages with this project as well.
Great. Okay. So let's turn to Lomero here. We have a question wondering if you'll take it to development yourself or sell the project.
Our plan right now is to take it to development ourselves. What we're looking at with the optionality analysis we're doing right now is, various things, including, contract mining as a way of mining, but more importantly, looking at, what are we going to do on the processing side? Will we build a plant? Will we, use available capacity that may exist with some of those neighboring operating, projects? So it's really the trade-off analysis based on this updated mineral resource estimate that'll become important for us in deciding just how we design the project moving forward.
Okay, and then just on that front, has there been any metallurgical work completed?
Yeah, we've done some preliminary metallurgical work as part of it. We've got another round going right now, which will feed into the preliminary economic assessment. So far, the results have been pretty typical of companies operating within the belt. We've been taking a look at some proprietary technology that some people have as a way to try to improve the gold recoveries. Not quite convinced yet that the benefit for the cost of putting in something like that may or may not be there, but we'll finalize that as we get through this optionality analysis as well. But so far, met testing has proven positive for us, and we'll have further testing coming next month or so that will round out the work that'll get into the PEA.
Great. Okay. And then with the sorry, the question just moved on me here. So again with Lomero, so there's the historical resource and the stage 2 that you're doing now. Will you, with that, will that kind of cover the historical resource area and allow that to potentially be upgraded, or?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my comments, we're definitely seeing in the second phase of the drilling the expected improvement in grades in the drill results because of the higher grade parts of the database that we were trying to validate. Our team's interpretation of the widths is a little narrower, so I don't think we're necessarily going to get back up to 20 million tons, but we do expect to see some improvement from the 10.7 million tons we've had so far. But with that, we definitely believe we have more than enough tons to put together a very solid operation as we move forward.
Great. Okay.
And I was going to also add, I think I also said in my comments, that 6,000 meter drill program where we start to look at the extensions of the deposit to the east and west, the focus of that is starting to add additional tons to the resource in the next round that will come in the PFS study in 2024.
Great. Yeah, lots of growth potential there. So with again with Lomero, can the mining permits be extended to cover all the geophysical highs?
Yeah, well, as with the permit we have right now at Lomero and Palmarejo, both have 3 years to run. The next stage for us at Lomero, when that is to take the exploration permit to a mining license, similar to what we're doing right now with Taral. we don't see that as problematic. Again, the licenses and permits in Spain are managed by local mining authorities or juntas. We've worked very well with the local junta in the Lumero Poyatos area, as evidenced by the recent permit extensions that we've received. So the permits are in place. We've got a fresh 3 years to go at Lumero, and we expect to be going to the mining license before that expires.
Okay, great. And then just kind of along the same lines, it kind of from the plan view, it looks like the deposit is right up near the edge of the project boundary or close to the edge there. Is there an opportunity to acquire that ground, or do you think you'll need to acquire that? Or?
Yeah, we're in discussions with the neighbor that has that section of land sort of along the corner between Lumero and Palmarejo, because we do see potentially some mutual benefit for us and the owners of that title to be able to work together on it. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah.
Great. Okay. And then we have a question here, just wondering if you kind of have or what the timing might be on when you would drill Palmarejo.
I think we'll get into drilling Palmarejo in that 6,000 meter program. We'll put a few holes in later this year. We're doing some geophysical and other types of testing right now to identify a few targets. So I think, again, having just rejuvenated the exploration permit, we don't want to let it sit idle too long. So we'll start putting a few holes in there as part of that program to be able to ensure that we are delivering on our requirements.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I think we've covered almost all the questions that have come in here. So let me run through quickly. Yeah, I think we've covered them all, so that's great. Had good audience participation in this webinar. Maybe if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up, Mike, I'll turn it over to you for the last word.
Yeah, no, again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking your time today. I know time is valuable. Certainly, if we haven't answered any questions that you wanted to ask, you can reach out to us. Our contact information is on our website. Really appreciate it. This is an exciting little company, lots on its plate. And hopefully you've been able to get the information you need today to help you as you look at your investment decisions.
So with that, I would like to thank Mike from Denarius Metals for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
Thank you.